The hospital room door slammed open, and there stood my husband Kwame with another woman draped on his arm like expensive jewelry. I was still in my hospital gown, barely 12 hours after delivering our second child, when he looked me dead in the eye and said, "Akosia, I'm marrying Felicia next month. You can keep the house, but I'm done with this marriage. What would you do if you walked in on this? Hit like if you've been betrayed, and comment below where you're watching from." The woman beside him, tall, light-skinned, dripping in designer clothes, smiled at me with the kind of cruelty that only comes from knowing you've won. My newborn daughter Amma stirred in my arms, oblivious to the domestic betrayal unfolding around her tiny world. "Kwame, what are you talking about?" My voice cracked, still weak from labor. "We just had a baby. Your daughter." "My daughter will be fine. Felicia and I will provide for both children." He adjusted his gold watch, the same one I'd bought him for our 5th wedding anniversary. "Felicia's family owns 3 hotels in Accra. She can give me the life I deserve." I stared at this man I'd loved for 8 years, the father of my children, standing in my recovery room announcing his new marriage like he was discussing the weather. The emotional manipulation was suffocating. How long had this been planned? "You're leaving me in the hospital?" I whispered. Felicia stepped forward, her heels clicking against the linoleum. "Akosia, be reasonable. Kwame needs a woman who can match his ambitions. You're just a teacher." Her voice dripped with fake sympathy. "Some marriages simply run their course." The public disgrace burned through my chest. Other patients' families lingered in the hallway, pretending not to eavesdrop on my humiliation. This cheating spouse had orchestrated this moment to break me completely. But what Kwame didn't know, what neither of them knew, was that while I lay in that hospital bed, my phone had been buzzing non-stop with calls from my lawyer. 3 months ago, I'd quietly invested in a tech startup founded by my former student. That morning, Microsoft had acquired the company for $9 billion. My small investment had just made me one of the wealthiest women in Ghana. I looked down at my sleeping daughter, then back at my soon-to-be ex-husband. "Get out. Akosia, don't make this harder than. Get out." My voice echoed through the corridor. As they walked away, Felicia's laughter trailing behind them, I reached for my phone. 27 missed calls from my lawyer. The revenge story was about to begin, but first, I needed to understand exactly how rich I'd just become. My hands shook as I dialed. "Collins." "Yes, it's Akosia. Tell me everything." The numbers he rattled off made my head spin. After taxes and fees, I was looking at roughly $1.2 billion. Enough to buy Felicia's family hotels 10 times over. Enough to ensure my children never wanted for anything. Enough to make Kwame regret this moment for the rest of his life. But as I held my daughter closer, one question burned through my mind. How long had Kwame been planning to leave me? And what else didn't I know about my own marriage? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more gripping stories like this. What do you think happens next? Comment below. 2 days later, I sat in my lawyer Collins Mensah's air-conditioned office in East Legon, still processing the magnitude of my fortune while my body ached from childbirth. Baby Amma slept peacefully in her carrier beside my chair, unaware that she'd just become one of the richest children in Africa. "The acquisition was finalized yesterday morning," Collins explained, sliding documents across his mahogany desk. "Your 40% stake in TechFlow Solutions has made you Ghana's newest billionaire. Congratulations, Akosia." I stared at the numbers on the official paperwork. $1.2 billion. The words felt foreign on my tongue. "There's more," Collins continued, his expression growing serious. "I've been monitoring your husband's activities as you requested. Kwame has been quite busy since leaving the hospital." My stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" "He's already filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences. He's also moved in with Felicia Asante Boateng at her family's estate in Airport Residential. The engagement announcement hit the society pages this morning. Collins handed me a copy of the Daily Graphic. There on the lifestyle section's front page was a photo of Kwame and Felicia at some upscale restaurant, her left hand prominently displaying a massive diamond ring. The headline read, "Oil executive Kwame Osei announces engagement to hotel heiress Felicia Asante Boateng." The infidelity in marriage couldn't have been more public. While I was in labor, he was planning his new life with another woman. He's also liquidated your joint savings account, Collins added quietly. 200,000 cedis. Everything you both saved during your marriage. The betrayal cut deeper than I expected. 8 years of building a life together, and he'd dismantled it in a matter of days. Collins, I need you to do something for me. My voice was steady now, focused. Don't file any response to his divorce petition yet. Let him think he's winning. And I want you to hire the best private investigator in Ghana. I need to know everything about Felicia Asante Boateng and her family. What are you planning, Akosua? I looked down at my sleeping daughter, then back at the newspaper photo of my husband's smug face. I'm planning to give him exactly what he deserves. But first, I need to understand who I'm really fighting. Collins nodded slowly. There's something else. Kwame's been asking around about your finances. He seems to think you'll struggle financially as a single mother. He has no idea about the Microsoft deal. Perfect. Let him think I was vulnerable. Let him believe his emotional manipulation had worked. Keep it that way. Not a word about the money to anyone. Can you do that? Attorney-client privilege, of course. But Akosua, what about your children? Kofi will be starting primary school soon, and now with baby Oma. My children will be fine. Better than fine. I stood, gathering Oma's carrier. They'll have everything their father's new wife could never provide. But Kwame doesn't need to know that yet. As I walked toward the door, Collins called after me. Akosua, be careful. Revenge can consume you if you're not careful. I turned back, thinking of Kwame's cruel smile in that hospital room, of Felicia's condescending voice, of the public humiliation in front of strangers. Maybe. But first, it's going to consume them. That evening, as I fed Oma in the living room of our modest 3-bedroom house in Dansoman, my 5-year-old son Kofi climbed onto the couch beside me. Mama, when is Daddy coming home? The question broke my heart all over again. How do you explain to a child that their father chose another woman over their family? Daddy is staying somewhere else for a while, sweetheart. Kofi's eyes filled with tears. Did I do something wrong? No, baby. You did nothing wrong. Nothing at all. As I held my children close, my phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Heard about your situation. Some women just can't keep their husbands satisfied. F. Felicia was taunting me. The co-parenting conflict was about to become a war. I looked around our simple home. The faded furniture, the small television, the modest kitchen where I'd cooked thousands of meals for a man who'd abandoned us. Soon, none of this would matter. Soon, I'd have the power to change everything. But first, I needed to visit someone who could help me understand my enemies better. My phone buzzed again. This time it was my sister Efua calling from Kumasi. Akosua, I just saw the newspaper. Are you okay? I'm better than okay, sister. Much better than anyone realizes. The next morning, I drove my 10-year-old Toyota Corolla through the bustling streets of Accra to meet with Auntie Grace, my mother's oldest friend and the city's most connected gossip network. If anyone knew the real story behind the Asante Boateng family, it would be her. I found her at the Makola market, negotiating prices for fresh tilapia like the shrewd businesswoman she'd always been. At 68, Grace Amanqua still commanded respect among the market vendors and society matrons alike. "Akojua, my dear child," she embraced me warmly, then noticed baby Alma in my arms. "This must be the little one. Beautiful like her mother." Her expression darkened. "I heard about that foolish husband of yours. Men can be such idiots." We walked to her small office above her textile shop, where she served me ginger tea and placed a protective hand over Alma's sleeping form. "Tell me about the Asante Boatengs," I said directly. Grace appreciated straight talk. Her eyes sharpened with interest. "Ah, so you want to know about your husband's new woman? Smart. Never go into battle without knowing your enemy." She leaned back in her chair, gathering her thoughts. "The Asante Boatengs are old money, but not clean money. Felicia's father, Nana Asante Boateng, built those hotels with money from questionable sources in the 80s. There were always rumors about drug connections, money laundering through the hospitality business." My pulse quickened. Rumors or facts? In Ghana, my dear, the line between rumors and facts is often very thin. But I know for certain that their hotels barely turn a profit. They survive on appearance and connections, not good business. Felicia's marriage to your husband isn't just about love, it's about legitimacy. Kwame's position in the oil industry gives them respectability. She paused to sip her tea. "But here's what's interesting. Felicia was engaged before, 3 years ago, to a banker from Nigeria. Very wealthy family. The engagement was broken suddenly, and the man's family claimed she'd been unfaithful. There was a scandal that the newspapers buried, but the society women remember everything. This was exactly the kind of information I needed. Felicia had a pattern. There's more," Auntie Grace continued. "I hear she's been pressuring Kwame to quit his job and join her family business. She wants complete control over him, just like she tried with the banker." My phone buzzed with a call from Collins. "Excuse me, Auntie. Akojua, where are you? We need to meet immediately. My investigator found something big." 30 minutes later, I sat in Collins' office while baby Alma napped, listening to information that changed everything. "The Asante Boateng hotels are in serious financial trouble," he reported, sliding a folder across his desk. "They're 3 months behind on property taxes, and there's a lawsuit from suppliers who haven't been paid. They owe approximately 2 million cedis in various debts." I absorbed this information carefully. Felicia's family wasn't wealthy. They were desperate. "More importantly," Collins continued, "Kwame doesn't know any of this. Our investigator spoke with someone at Felicia's bank. She's been hiding the family's financial problems from him. In fact, she's been using his savings to make minimum payments on their debts." The pieces clicked together. Felicia hadn't stolen my husband for love, she'd stolen him for money. And now she was systematically draining his resources while planning to trap him in her family's failing business. There's something else. Kwame signed a prenuptial agreement yesterday. If the marriage ends, he gets nothing. But if he joins the hotel business and it succeeds, he becomes a partner. I almost laughed at the irony. While Kwame thought he was marrying into wealth, he was actually being set up as the financial savior for a family of sophisticated con artists. "Collins, I want you to buy the debt." "What?" "All of it. The property taxes, the supplier lawsuits, everything. Buy it all through shell companies so they don't know it's me. Can you do that?" Collins stared at me for a long moment. "Akojua, that's brilliant. If you own their debt, you control their fate." "Exactly. And I want it done before their wedding next month." As I prepared to leave, Collins handed me one final document. This came in today. Kwame's formal request for child support. He's claiming he can't afford to support Kofi and Oma adequately on his salary. The audacity was breathtaking. He'd stolen our savings, abandoned us for another woman, and now wanted me to subsidize his new life. I kissed sleeping Omar's forehead and smiled. Tell him he'll get his answer soon. Very soon. That evening, I sat in my small garden while Kofi played with his toy cars nearby. My phone rang. Kwame's number. Akosua, we need to talk about money. I know this is hard for you, but I need you to be reasonable about the divorce settlement and child support. His condescending tone made my skin crawl. What did you have in mind, Kwame? I'll take care of the children, obviously, but you need to be realistic about what you can expect. Teaching doesn't pay much, and now that you're a single mother. He was enjoying this. The power play, the emotional manipulation, the assumption that I was helpless without him. I'll consider whatever you think is fair, I said sweetly. Good. I knew you'd be reasonable. Felicia was worried you might be difficult. After hanging up, I looked up at the evening sky and whispered a prayer of gratitude. Tomorrow, I would start dismantling their perfect little world, piece by piece. But first, I had a wedding to attend. If you're loving this story of revenge and justice, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. What do you think Akosua should do with her newfound power? Let me know in the comments. 3 weeks later, I stood in the back of the Holy Trinity Cathedral, watching my husband marry another woman. The church was packed with Accra's social elite, all eager to witness the union between the oil executive and the hotel heiress. What they didn't know was that the real show was about to begin. I wore a simple black dress and sat in the last pew, baby Oma quiet in her carrier beside me. Kofi was with my sister Efua for the day. No need for him to witness this particular chapter of our family's story. Felicia looked radiant in her custom-made Kent wedding gown, easily worth more money than most people earned in a year. Kwame stood proud beside her in his matching Kent cloth, smiling as if he'd won the lottery. In a way, he thought he had. The irony was delicious. While they exchanged vows, Collins was in his office finalizing the purchase of every major debt the Asante Boateng family owed. By the time they finished their wedding reception, I would legally own their financial future. My phone vibrated with a text from Collins. It's done. You now control 2.3 million cedis worth of their debt. What's the next move? I typed back. Let them enjoy their honeymoon. We'll introduce ourselves when they get back. After the ceremony, I watched the receiving line of well-wishers congratulating the happy couple. Politicians, business leaders, society matrons, all the people who would witness Felicia's family's upcoming downfall. As I prepared to leave, someone tapped my shoulder. Akosua. What are you doing here? I turned to find Kwame's mother, Mama Akosua, the woman I was named after, who had once loved me like her own daughter. Mama, I greeted her respectfully. Her eyes filled with sadness. My dear, you shouldn't be here. This must be so painful. I needed to see it for myself, I said honestly. To understand what was worth destroying our family for. Mama Akosua glanced around nervously, then moved closer. Can I tell you something? Woman to woman. I nodded. I don't trust that girl. There's something calculating about her. The way she looks at Kwame. It's not love, it's hunger. And her family. She shook her head. Old money or not, there are whispers about their business practices. What kind of whispers? The kind that suggest their wealth isn't as clean or as stable as they pretend. She squeezed my hand. My son is making a mistake. A terrible mistake. But he's too proud and too foolish to see it. As if summoned by our conversation, Kwame approached with Felicia on his arm, both glowing with champagne and self-satisfaction. Mother, what are you doing talking to her? Kwame's voice carried an edge of irritation. She is still the mother of your children, Mama Akosua replied firmly. She will always be family to me. Felicia's smile was razor-sharp. Akosua, how? Surprising to see you here. I hope you're not finding this too difficult. The condescension in her voice was thick as palm oil. This woman thought she'd won completely. Actually, I wanted to congratulate you both, I said smoothly. Marriage is such an important partnership, especially when it comes to sharing responsibilities. Something flickered in Felicia's eyes. Suspicion. But Kwame was too drunk on victory to notice. That's very mature of you, Akojua, he said patronizingly. I hope we can co-parent peacefully for the children's sake. Oh, I'm sure we'll have many opportunities to discuss the children's future, I replied. And their security. Financial security is so important for growing families, don't you think? Felicia's grip on Kwame's arm tightened slightly. She was smart enough to sense the undercurrent in my words. Well, fortunately, that won't be an issue for us, she said carefully. My family's business provides very well. I'm sure it does. Hotels can be such profitable ventures when they're managed properly. The barb hit its mark. Felicia's smile faltered for just a moment before recovering. Enjoy your reception, I said, turning to leave. I'm sure it will be memorable. As I walked away, I heard Felicia whisper urgently to Kwame, but I couldn't make out the words. It didn't matter. Soon enough, they'd understand exactly what they were dealing with. That evening, I sat in my garden with Collins, who had come to deliver the final paperwork on the debt acquisition. They have no idea what's coming, he said, shaking his head in amazement. The wedding alone probably cost them 300,000 cedis they didn't have. How long before the creditors start calling? I've instructed them to begin collection procedures next week. The Asante Botengs will receive notice that their debts have been sold to a consortium of investors. They'll have 30 days to pay in full or face legal action. I looked at the documents in my hands, proof of ownership over the family that had tried to destroy mine. The power was intoxicating, but I had to be careful. Revenge was a dish best served with precision. Collins, I want you to send them an offer. What kind of offer? A way out. One that requires them to come to me directly. My phone buzzed with a WhatsApp message from an unknown number. A wedding photo of Kwame and Felicia, with the message, "Just wanted to share our happiness with you. Hope you're managing okay as a single mother. Mrs. Osei." The use of my former married name was a calculated insult. Mrs. Osei, the title Felicia had stolen along with my husband. I screenshot the message and forwarded it to Collins. Add this to our file. Documentation of harassment. But as I looked at that photo, my ex-husband's triumphant smile, his new wife's possessive grip, I realized something unexpected. I felt nothing. No pain, no jealousy, no regret. What I felt was anticipation. Because tomorrow, the real game would begin. And this time, I held all the cards. The call came at 7:47 a.m. on a Tuesday, exactly 1 week after Kwame and Felicia returned from their honeymoon in Dubai. I was feeding baby Amma when my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Is this Akojua Osei? The voice was strained, desperate. This is Akojua Mensah, I corrected coolly. I'd legally reverted to my maiden name the day after the wedding. Who is this? This is Nana Asante Boteng, Felicia's father. I need to speak with you urgently. The desperation in his voice was music to my ears. Collins had been right. The collection notices had worked quickly. I'm sorry, Mr. Asante Boteng, but I can't imagine what we would have to discuss. Please, he said, his dignity cracking. It's about the debts. The consortium that bought our obligations. We need more time. Our lawyers said you might be able to help us understand who these investors are. I let the silence stretch, enjoying every second of his discomfort. Why would you think I could help with that? Because my daughter married your ex-husband, and we hoped you might have connections in the business community who could advise us. The irony was breathtaking. The man whose daughter had stolen my husband was now begging me for help. Mr. Asante Boateng, I'm just a schoolteacher. I don't have those kinds of connections. But surely your lawyer, or someone you know. Actually, I interrupted, there might be something I can do, but it would require meeting in person. Are you available this afternoon? Relief flooded his voice. Yes, absolutely. Where would you like to meet? The Golden Tulip Hotel. 2 o'clock. After hanging up, I called Collins. They took the bait. Nana Asante Boateng wants to meet this afternoon. Are you sure about this approach, Akosua? Once you reveal yourself, there's no going back. I'm ready. It's time they understood who they're really dealing with. That afternoon, I sat in the Golden Tulip's executive lounge wearing a tailored business suit, one of several I'd recently purchased as part of my new image. Baby Alma was with my housekeeper, and I felt powerful in a way I'd never experienced before. Nana Asante Boateng arrived looking like a man facing execution. He was tall and once handsome, but stress had carved deep lines around his eyes. Behind him walked Felicia, dressed in designer clothes but unable to hide her anxiety. They spotted me immediately and approached with the careful hesitancy of people who knew they needed something they couldn't afford to want. Mrs. Mensah, thank you for meeting us, Nana said, extending his hand. I shook it briefly, then gestured for them to sit. I understand you're having some financial difficulties. Felicia leaned forward aggressively. Why would you want to help us? After everything that's happened between us. I studied my husband's new wife, the woman who had taunted me in my hospital room, who had sent me mocking messages about her happiness. She was beautiful, I'd give her that, but desperation had dulled her shine. Maybe because I understand what it's like to worry about providing for your family, I said calmly. Where is Kwame, by the way? Shouldn't your husband be here supporting his new in-laws? Felicia's jaw tightened. Kwame is at work. We didn't want to bother him with family business matters. Translation: they were hiding their financial crisis from him. Perfect. Here's what I know about your situation, I continued, opening a folder I'd brought. You owe 2.3 million cedis to various creditors. Property taxes, supplier payments, bank loans, contractor fees. Your hotels are bleeding money, and you've been robbing Peter to pay Paul for the past 2 years. Nana's face went pale. How do you know all this? Because, Mr. Asante Boateng, I am the consortium that bought your debt. The silence that followed was profound. Felicia's eyes widened in shock, while her father seemed to age 10 years in 10 seconds. That's impossible, Felicia whispered. You're a teacher. You live in Dancerman. You drive a Toyota. I drive a Toyota because I choose to. I live in Dancerman because it's my home. And yes, I am a teacher. But I'm also worth approximately $1.2 billion. I let that number sink in while I calmly sipped my coffee. 3 months ago, I invested in a small tech company founded by one of my former students. Microsoft bought that company for $9 billion. My share, after taxes, made me one of the wealthiest people in Ghana. Nana found his voice first. Why are you telling us this? Because I want you to understand exactly what you did when you decided to destroy my family. You didn't just steal a teacher's husband. You stole a billionaire's husband. And now I own you. Felicia's composure finally cracked. This isn't possible. Kwame would have known. He would have told me. Kwame doesn't know. No one knows except my lawyer and my financial advisors. I've been very careful to maintain my privacy while I decided what to do with my newfound power. I stood up, gathering my folder. Here's my offer. You have 48 hours to tell Kwame the truth about your family's financial situation and your role in orchestrating your marriage to him for money. If you do that, I'll consider restructuring your debt at reasonable terms. And if we don't? Nana asked weakly. Then I call in all debts immediately. Your hotels will be seized. Your family will face bankruptcy proceedings. And I'll make sure everyone in Accra's business community knows exactly why the Asante Boateng empire collapsed. Felicia stood up shakily. You can't do this. It's cruel. I looked at this woman who had stood in my hospital room and called me inadequate, who had taunted me about her husband stealing Victory, who had sent me photos of her wedding to mock my pain. Cruel. You want to talk about cruel? Let me tell you about cruel, Felicia. Cruel is abandoning the mother of your children in a hospital room. Cruel is stealing someone's savings to pay for your engagement ring. Cruel is building your happiness on someone else's destruction. I walked toward the exit, then turned back. 48 hours. Tell him the truth, or I will. And trust me, my version of the story will be much less flattering. As I left the hotel, I could hear them arguing behind me. The African marriage drama was about to reach its climax, and I was finally in control of the narrative. But I wasn't prepared for what would happen when Kwame learned the truth. My phone buzzed with a message from Collins. Emergency meeting. Something's happened with Kwame. Come to the office immediately. The revenge was working, but apparently, it was about to get more complicated. Hit that like button if you're on Akojua's side. What do you think Kwame's reaction will be when he learns the truth? Comment below and don't forget to subscribe for the next explosive chapter. Colin's office felt like a war room when I arrived an hour later. Documents were spread across every surface, and his usually calm demeanor had been replaced by urgent intensity. Akojua, we have a problem, he said before I'd even sat down. Kwame knows. My heart stopped. Knows what? Everything. About the money, about you buying the debt, about your meeting with the Asante Boatengs today. He's been making calls all afternoon. I sank into the chair across from his desk. How is that possible? I gave them 48 hours. Felicia told him immediately after you left the hotel. But that's not the worst part. Collins handed me a legal document. He filed an emergency petition this morning, before your meeting. He's claiming you've been hiding assets during divorce proceedings. He wants an injunction to freeze your accounts until a full financial audit can be completed. The paper trembled in my hands as I read the legal language. Kwame was trying to steal my billions before I could use them against him. Can he do that? He's trying. The hearing is scheduled for tomorrow morning. If the judge grants the injunction, all your assets will be locked up for months, maybe longer. My phone rang. Kwame's number. I showed Collins the screen. Answer it, he advised. But be very careful what you say. He might be recording. I put the call on speaker. Hello, Kwame. You conniving, lying witch. His voice was raw with fury. How long were you planning this? How long have you been sitting on billions of dollars while pretending to be a poor, abandoned wife? I wasn't pretending anything. $1 billion, Akojua. You let me feel guilty about leaving you with nothing when you could buy and sell me 1,000 times over. The rage in his voice was intoxicating. For the first time since this began, Kwame sounded truly hurt. The emotional manipulation was finally flowing in the other direction. Actually, it's 1.2 billion, I corrected calmly. And I didn't let you do anything, Kwame. You chose to abandon your family. You chose to marry another woman. You chose to steal our savings and leave your children behind. The money doesn't change any of that. The hell it doesn't. You made me look like a fool. No, Kwame. You did that all by yourself. We'll see about that. My lawyer says I'm entitled to half of everything earned during our marriage. Half of $1.2 billion. Akosia. You played games with the wrong man. The line went dead. I looked at Collins, who was already typing frantically on his laptop. He can't claim half, can he? I asked. Under normal circumstances, spouses are entitled to marital assets. But these aren't normal circumstances. The investment was made with money you earned independently, and the acquisition happened after he'd already abandoned the marriage. We can fight this. But can we win? Collins stopped typing and looked at me seriously. I don't know. Ghana's divorce laws are complex, especially when this kind of money is involved. The judge could rule either way. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Congratulations on your wealth. Unfortunately, half of it belongs to my son. See you in court tomorrow. Mrs. Kwame Osei Sr. Even Kwame's mother had chosen sides. The co-parenting conflict was about to become a very public legal battle. There's something else, Collins continued. Word is already spreading through Accra's business community. By tomorrow morning, everyone will know about your fortune and the divorce battle. The media will be all over this story. I thought about my children, 5-year-old Kofi who didn't understand why daddy lived with another woman, and baby Amma who would grow up in the shadow of this public spectacle. Collins, what if I just gave him what he wants? What if I settled quietly and avoided the circus? You could. But Akosia, think about what that would mean. You'd be rewarding him for his betrayal. You'd be teaching your children that abandoning your family pays off. And you'd be letting Felicia and her family off the hook for their deception. He was right. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about justice. My phone rang again. This time it was Auntie Grace. Akosia, my dear, I just heard the most incredible story. Is it true? Are you really worth over $1 billion? News traveled fast in Accra. It's true, Auntie. And that foolish boy is trying to take half of it. He's trying. Auntie Grace was quiet for a moment. Then she chuckled. You know what this means, don't you? By tomorrow, every eligible man in Ghana is going to be calling you a beautiful, wealthy single mother. You'll have more suitors than you know what to do with. Despite everything, I laughed. I'm not exactly in the market for a new husband, Auntie. Maybe not today, but someday. And when that day comes, you'll have your pick of any man you want. Meanwhile, that ex-husband of yours is stuck with a woman whose family is bankrupt and desperate. After ending the call, I sat quietly in Collins' office, processing the magnitude of what was about to happen. Tomorrow, my private life would become public entertainment. But maybe that wasn't entirely bad. Collins, I want you to do something for me. Anything. I want you to call every major newspaper and television station in Ghana. Tell them about tomorrow's hearing. Make sure they understand the full story, the hospital abandonment, the secret wealth, the debt manipulation, everything. Collins raised an eyebrow. Are you sure? That will make this very public, very quickly. Good. Let Ghana see exactly what kind of man Kwame Osei really is. And let them see what happens when you underestimate a woman you think you've broken. As I drove home that evening, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing with calls from reporters, distant relatives, and old friends who'd somehow heard the news. I ignored them all, focused on the battle ahead. But when I pulled into my driveway in Dansoman, I found something that made my blood run cold. Kwame's car parked outside my house, with Felicia in the passenger seat. Through my living room window, I could see them talking to 5-year-old Kofi. My children were about to become pawns in this war, and I would do anything to protect them. I rushed through my front door to find Kofi sitting on our old sofa between Kwame and Felicia, looking confused and overwhelmed. Baby Amma was crying in her crib upstairs, and my housekeeper Adwoa was nowhere to be seen. "What are you doing in my house?" I demanded, my voice sharp with protective fury. Kwame stood up slowly, his expression a mixture of anger and something else. Fear, maybe, or desperation. "This is still my home too, legally. Until the divorce is finalized. Daddy said he's taking me to live with him and Auntie Felicia," Kofi said in his innocent 5-year-old voice. "Is that true, Mama?" My heart shattered. They were using my baby as a weapon. "Kofi, go upstairs and check on your sister for Mama, okay?" I kept my voice gentle for him while my eyes burned holes through Kwame. After Kofi reluctantly climbed the stairs, I turned back to face them. "If you think you can manipulate my children." "Our children," Kwame corrected. "And I'm not manipulating anyone. I'm protecting them from a mother who's been lying about everything for months." Felicia stood up, smoothing her expensive dress. She looked different now. Harder, more calculating. The desperation from our hotel meeting had been replaced by renewed confidence. "Akojua, we need to discuss custody arrangements," she said with fake sweetness. "Now that we know about your situation, we think it's best for the children to have stability. Kwame can provide that." I almost laughed at the audacity. Stability? You mean the stability of a man who abandoned his family and a woman whose family is bankrupt? "Careful," Kwame warned. "My lawyer says your hidden assets could be seen as financial fraud. A judge might question whether someone who lies about money can be trusted with children." The threat was clear, and it terrified me more than any financial lawsuit could. They were going after my babies. "Get out," I said quietly. "Both of you. Now." "We're not done talking," Felicia started. "Get out of my house." My shout brought Kofi running back downstairs, tears in his eyes at seeing the adults in his life screaming at each other. The sight of my frightened son gave me the strength I needed. "Kofi, come to Mama," I said softly, kneeling down to his level. He ran into my arms, and I held him tight while Kwame and Felicia watched. "Daddy, why is everyone angry?" Kofi whispered. "Because grown-ups sometimes disagree about important things," I told him. "But no matter what happens, Mama and Daddy both love you very much." Kwame's expression softened for a moment, and I saw a flicker of the man I'd once loved. But Felicia touched his arm, and the moment passed. "We'll see you in court tomorrow, Akojua," he said formally. "Bring your lawyer. Bring your billions. Let's see what a judge thinks about all of this." After they left, I sat on my sofa holding Kofi while baby Amma continued crying upstairs. My son looked up at me with those innocent eyes that looked so much like his father's. "Mama, are you and Daddy getting divorced like Uncle Kwaku and Auntie Esi?" There was no point in lying anymore. "Yes, sweetheart. We are." "Will I still see Daddy?" "Of course. Daddy will always be your daddy, no matter what." But even as I said the words, I wondered if they were true. If Kwame was willing to use the children as weapons now, how far would he go? My phone rang. "Collins. Akojua, we have a problem. A big one." "What now?" "I just got off the phone with Kwame's new lawyer. They're not just going after half your assets. They're filing for full custody of both children." The room started spinning. "On what grounds?" "They're claiming you're an unfit mother. They say hiding wealth shows dishonesty and poor judgment. They're also going to argue that your vindictive behavior toward the Asante Boateng family demonstrates instability." I looked down at Kofi, who had fallen asleep in my arms despite all the chaos. The thought of losing my children made me physically sick. "Collins, what are our chances?" "I don't know. Family court judges have wide discretion, especially when this much money is involved. They might see Kwame as more stable, married man, steady job, no history of deception. But he abandoned us. He left me in a hospital bed. I know. But his lawyer will spin that as him leaving an unhappy marriage to provide a better life for his children. With Felicia's family connections and their apparent wealth. Their apparent wealth is fake. They're bankrupt. But the judge doesn't know that yet. We need evidence, a causua, real proof of financial fraud or other wrongdoing. And we need it before tomorrow's hearing. After Collins hung up, I sat in my dark living room, holding my sleeping son and listening to my daughter's cries from upstairs. 6 months ago, I'd been a simple teacher with a loving family. Now I was a billionaire fighting for my children's futures against people who saw them as assets to be acquired. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Your children deserve a stable home with 2 parents who love them. Don't let your pride destroy their futures. F. Felicia was still playing games, but this time she'd crossed a line. No one threatened my children and got away with it. I gently carried Kofi upstairs to his bed, then picked up crying baby Oma and held her close. As I rocked her back to sleep, I made a decision that would change everything. If Kwame and Felicia wanted to play dirty, I would show them just how dirty a billionaire mother could get. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I'd been saving for exactly this moment. Hello, this is Investigator Morrison. This is a causua mensa. I need you to find everything there is to know about Kwame Osei and Felicia Asante Boateng. Everything. And I need it by tomorrow morning. The gloves were finally coming off. The High Court of Ghana had never seen anything like it. By 8 a.m., a crowd of reporters, curious onlookers, and society gossips had gathered outside the courthouse in Accra. The story of the billionaire teacher and her cheating husband had captured the nation's attention overnight. I arrived in a convoy that I deliberately arranged to make a statement. A black Mercedes S-Class followed by 2 SUVs carrying my legal team and security detail. Gone was the modest teacher in her Toyota Corolla. Today, I was a causua mensa, billionaire businesswoman, fighting for her children. The cameras flashed as I stepped out wearing a tailored Stella McCartney suit and carrying a leather briefcase that cost more than most people's annual salary. Behind me walked Collins and 2 additional lawyers I'd flown in from London overnight. Kwame and Felicia arrived minutes later, looking significantly less confident than they had the previous evening. The harsh morning light revealed the strain in their faces as they pushed through the crowd of reporters shouting questions. Inside the courthouse, Judge Patricia Asante, no relation to Felicia's family, called the proceedings to order. She was known throughout Ghana's legal community as fair but tough, exactly what this case needed. This is highly unusual, Judge Asante began, looking over the mountain of paperwork before her. A divorce proceeding combined with emergency asset freeze requests and custody disputes. Mr. Osei, your petition claims Mrs. Mensah has been hiding substantial assets. Please present your evidence. Kwame's lawyer, a sharp-dressed man named Barrister Apong, stood confidently. Your Honor, Mrs. Mensah has deliberately concealed wealth exceeding $1 billion during active divorce proceedings. This represents fraud on a massive scale and demonstrates a pattern of deception that makes her unfit for custody of the couple's minor children. He presented documents showing my bank statements, investment records, and the timeline of the Microsoft acquisition. Everything was accurate, which made it all the more damaging. Furthermore, Barrister Apong continued, Mrs. Mensah has used her secret wealth to manipulate and harass my client's new family, purchasing their debts in what can only be described as financial stalking. The judge turned to Collins. How does your client respond to these allegations? Collins stood, and I felt the weight of everything resting on his next words. Your Honor, my client invested her own money, earned from her teaching salary, in a legitimate business venture. The fact that this investment proved extraordinarily successful does not constitute fraud. As for the timing, Mrs. Mensah learned of her windfall only after her husband had already abandoned her and their newborn child in a hospital room to marry another woman. Murmurs rippled through the packed courtroom. Collins continued, "The purchase of the Asante Boateng family debts was a legal business transaction. If Mr. Osei is concerned about financial manipulation, perhaps he should examine his new wife's family's business practices more closely." This was our cue. I nodded to Collins, who signaled to our investigator Morrison, seated in the gallery. "Your Honor, we have evidence that Mr. Osei has been the victim of an elaborate confidence scheme orchestrated by the Asante Boateng family." Barrister Apong jumped up. "Objection. This is irrelevant to the custody and asset questions before the court." "I'll allow it," Judge Asante ruled. "But make it relevant quickly, Counselor." Collins presented a thick folder to the court. "These documents show that the Asante Boateng family has been bankrupt for over 2 years. Their hotels are failing, they owe millions in unpaid debts, and they have been systematically hiding their financial collapse from potential business partners, including Mr. Osei." The judge examined the documents while Felicia's face went pale. "More importantly," Collins continued, "we have evidence that Mrs. Felicia Asante Boateng deliberately targeted Mr. Osei as a financial solution to her family's problems. She has done this before." Morrison stood and handed another folder to the court clerk. "These are records from Nigeria, Your Honor. 3 years ago, Mrs. Asante Boateng was engaged to banker Emeka Akoli. That engagement ended when the Akoli family discovered she was attempting to use their son to gain access to their banking connections for money laundering purposes." The courtroom erupted. Reporters frantically scribbled notes while Kwame turned to stare at Felicia in shock. That's not true," Felicia whispered, but her voice carried no conviction. Collins wasn't finished. "Your Honor, we also have evidence that Mrs. Asante Boateng has been systematically draining Mr. Osei's personal savings since their marriage began. She has used his money to make minimum payments on her family's debts while hiding the full scope of their financial crisis." Judge Asante looked directly at Kwame. "Mr. Osei, were you aware of your wife's family's financial situation when you married her?" Kwame's voice was barely a whisper. "No, Your Honor." "Were you aware that your personal savings were being used to pay her family's debts?" "No, Your Honor." The judge turned back to Collins. "This is all very interesting, Counselor, but how does it relate to your client's concealment of assets?" This was the moment we'd been building toward. "Your Honor, my client had every reason to protect her assets from discovery. She suspected financial impropriety and was gathering evidence of fraud. Her caution has been vindicated by these revelations." Collins paused for effect. "Moreover, we contend that Mr. Osei's marriage to Mrs. Asante Boateng was obtained through fraud and misrepresentation. Under these circumstances, he has no claim to assets acquired before, during, or after the fraudulent union." The judge was quiet for a long moment, studying all the documents before her. "I'm going to call a recess," she finally announced. "I need time to review all this evidence properly. We'll reconvene at 2 p.m. As the court emptied, I watched Kwame and Felicia in heated discussion with their lawyers. Kwame kept glancing at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Anger, certainly, but also something that might have been regret. Collins squeezed my shoulder. "That went better than I hoped. But the custody question is still unresolved. Judge Asante will want to know what's best for the children." I thought about Kofi and baby Alma, safe with my sister while their parents fought in court like gladiators. "Collins, what if I offered him something he couldn't refuse?" "What do you mean?" I smiled, feeling the power of my position for the first time since this nightmare began. What if I offered to save him? The afternoon session was about to begin, and I had one more card to play. But first, I needed to have a conversation with my ex-husband. The drama in the courtroom is far from over. What offer will Akosua make to Kwame? Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't believe what happens next. What do you think should happen to Felicia? Let me know in the comments. During the lunch recess, I found Kwame sitting alone on a bench outside the courthouse, his head in his hands. Felicia was nowhere to be seen, probably meeting with her family's lawyers to control the damage from the morning's revelations. I approached carefully, remembering that this was still the father of my children, despite everything that had happened between us. Kwame. He looked up, and I was shocked to see tears in his eyes. This proud man who had abandoned me in a hospital bed now looked broken and defeated. How could I have been so stupid, Akosua? His voice was raw with pain. 8 years of marriage, 2 beautiful children, and I threw it all away for this. I sat down beside him, maintaining some distance but close enough to talk privately. You thought you were upgrading, I said simply. Rich wife, wealthy in-laws, high society connections. It must have seemed like a dream come true. A nightmare is more like it. He laughed bitterly. Do you know what Felicia said to me this morning when those financial documents came out? She said I should have been grateful she chose me, because now at least I'd get half of your billions in the divorce. The casual cruelty of that statement was breathtaking, even for Felicia. She never loved you, Kwame. You were just a solution to her family's problems. And you? He turned to look at me directly. Did you ever love me? Or was I just the father of your children while you secretly built your fortune? The question hurt more than I expected. I loved you with everything I had. The money. That happened after you'd already decided I wasn't enough for you. We sat in silence for a moment, watching reporters gather outside the courthouse entrance. What's going to happen to us, Akosua? To our children? This was the opening I'd been waiting for. That depends on you, Kwame. I have a proposition. He looked at me suspiciously. What kind of proposition? I pulled out a document Collins had prepared during the recess. I'm offering to pay off all of Felicia's family debts. 2.3 million Sadies. In exchange, you agree to an uncontested divorce with joint custody of our children and no claim to my assets. Kwame stared at the paper. Why would you do that? Because despite everything, you're the father of my children. They need their father in their lives, but they need him to be financially stable and emotionally present. Right now, you're trapped in a marriage built on lies, drowning in debts you didn't know existed. I let him process this for a moment. There's more, I continued. I'm also offering you a position as Chief Operations Officer for a new venture capital firm I'm starting. Base salary of 500,000 Sadies per year, plus equity participation. His eyes widened. You'd trust me with that kind of responsibility? After everything I've done. You're good at your job, Kwame. You always were. Your problem wasn't competence, it was judgment. But people can learn from their mistakes. What about Felicia? I smiled coldly. What about her? If you take this deal, you'll have enough money to buy out her family's debts and enough income to support yourself independently. You won't need her anymore. The implications hung in the air between us. I was offering him a way out of his fraudulent marriage and back to financial independence. And if I don't take the deal, then we go back into that courtroom, and I destroy both of you. I'll present evidence of the financial fraud, the emotional manipulation, and the deliberate deception. Felicia's family will go bankrupt, she'll likely face criminal charges, and you'll be left with nothing except child support payments you can't afford. Kwame was quiet for a long time, staring at the document in his hands. You could have done this from the beginning, he said finally. You could have told me about the money, used it to save our marriage. Would it have saved our marriage, Kwame? Or would you have just found other reasons to leave? Other ways to feel inadequate or trapped? He had no answer for that, because we both knew the truth. Our marriage had been over long before Felicia appeared. The money was just the final chapter in a story that had been ending for years. There's one more condition, I added. You have to tell Judge Asante the truth about everything. The fraud, the manipulation, Felicia's real motives for marrying you. All of it. She'll never forgive me. Do you want her forgiveness? Or do you want your freedom? Before he could answer, Collins appeared beside us. Court's reconvening in 10 minutes. Have you made a decision, Mr. Osei? Kwame looked at the document one more time, then at me. If I do this, what happens to us? To our family? We become what we should have been from the beginning, I said. Co-parents who respect each other and put our children first. Friends, maybe someday, but not husband and wife. That ship has sailed. He signed the document. 20 minutes later, we were back in the courtroom. Judge Asante listened as Kwame formally withdrew his claims to my assets and testified about the fraud perpetrated by the Asante Boateng family. Felicia sat in stunned silence as her new husband systematically dismantled every lie she'd built their relationship on. Your Honor, Collins announced, my client and Mr. Osei have reached an amicable agreement on all matters. We request the court approve their settlement and grant the divorce decree. Judge Asante reviewed the paperwork carefully. This is quite generous, Mrs. Mensah. Are you certain about these terms? Yes, Your Honor. I believe this arrangement serves the best interests of everyone involved, especially the children. Very well. Divorce granted. Custody arrangements as agreed. Case closed. As the courtroom emptied, Felicia approached me with fury blazing in her eyes. You think you've won, she hissed. You've destroyed my family, stolen my husband, ruined everything I worked for. I looked at this woman who had caused so much pain, and felt nothing but pity. I didn't steal your husband, Felicia. I gave him back his self-respect. And I didn't destroy your family. I exposed what it really was. As I walked out of the courthouse, reporters shouted questions about my plans for the future. But I ignored them all, focused on just one thing: going home to my children. The revenge was complete, but something unexpected had happened in the process. I'd found something better than vengeance. I'd found my power. 6 months later, I stood on the balcony of my new penthouse apartment in Airport Residential, watching the sun set over Accra's skyline. The view was spectacular, a far cry from my modest house in Dansoman, though I'd kept that too, as a reminder of where I'd come from. Baby Alma, now 10 months old, sat in her high chair on the balcony, clapping her hands at the colorful sunset. Inside, 6-year-old Kofi was video calling with his father, their weekly routine that had become as natural as breathing. The transformation in our lives had been remarkable, but the most surprising change was in Kwame himself. Mama, Daddy wants to talk to you, Kofi called from the living room. I picked up Alma and walked inside, accepting the tablet from my son. How's my other princess? Kwame asked, smiling at Alma through the screen. She gurgled happily at the sight of her father. She's perfect. Starting to crawl everywhere. I settled onto the couch with both children. How was the Lagos trip? Productive. We closed the deal with the renewable energy startup. Your new venture capital firm is going to make a lot of money on that investment. It still felt surreal sometimes, having normal conversations with the man who had once tried to destroy me. But the truth was, our relationship now was healthier than it had ever been during our marriage. Any word from Felicia? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Kwame's expression darkened slightly. Her lawyer called again about the bankruptcy proceedings. She's still claiming I owe her something for the broken marriage contract. After our court victory, things had moved quickly. Kwame had annulled his marriage to Felicia on grounds of fraud, and I had indeed paid off the Asante Boateng family debts, not out of generosity, but to gain complete control over their failed hotel empire. I now owned their properties and was converting them into affordable housing developments for teachers and other public servants. Felicia, meanwhile, had fled Ghana in disgrace. Last I heard, she was in Dubai, trying to seduce another wealthy businessman into solving her family's problems. Let her lawyers waste their time, I said. The prenup she made you sign protects you from any financial obligations to her. I still can't believe how blind I was, Kwame said quietly. Everything about our relationship was a lie. Not everything, I corrected gently. The lesson was real. And the growth that came from it was real. Look at you now. You're a better father, a better businessman, and a better man than you were a year ago. It was true. Kwame had thrown himself into his new role at my venture capital firm with the passion of someone determined to prove himself worthy of a second chance. He'd also become the kind of present, engaged father he'd never been during our marriage. Our co-parenting arrangement was working beautifully. The children spent weekdays with me and weekends with their father at his new apartment in East Legon. No more tension, no more fighting, no more using the kids as weapons. Speaking of growth, Kwame said, I saw the Forbes article about your foundation. $15 million in scholarships for African girls pursuing STEM education? Akosua, you're changing lives. The Oma Mensa Foundation, named after my daughter, had become my greatest source of pride. Using my wealth to create opportunities for young women felt like the perfect way to honor the journey that had brought me to this point. Money is just paper unless you use it to build something meaningful, I replied. After ending the call, I sat with my children in our beautiful living room, reflecting on how dramatically our lives had changed. The African marriage drama that had once threatened to destroy us had ultimately freed us all. My phone buzzed with a text from Collins. Dinner invitation from Dr. Kwabena Asante. Should I tell him you're busy again? I smiled. Dr. Asante was a neurosurgeon who'd been persistently asking me out for the past 3 months. He was handsome, intelligent, kind to my children, and completely uninterested in my money. He had plenty of his own. For the first time since my divorce, I was actually considering saying yes. Tell him I'll call him tomorrow, I texted back. Kofi looked up from his coloring book. Mama, are you going to marry Dr. Kwabena? I don't know, sweetheart. Would that be okay with you? Only if he promises to be nice to Oma and me. And if Daddy likes him too. The wisdom of children never ceased to amaze me. Later that evening, after putting both children to bed, I stood once again on my balcony, looking out over the city that had been the backdrop for my transformation from abandoned wife to empowered woman. My phone rang. It was Auntie Grace. Akosua, my dear, I just wanted you to know how proud I am of you. The way you handled everything, the betrayal, the court case, the divorce, you showed every woman in Ghana what real strength looks like. Thank you, Auntie. But I didn't do it for Ghana. I did it for my children. And that's exactly why it worked. You fought with love, not just anger. There's a difference. After hanging up, I realized she was right. My revenge against Kwame and Felicia had been complete, but it hadn't been motivated by hatred. It had been motivated by love, for my children, for myself, and ultimately, even for the man who had betrayed me. The domestic betrayal that had once broken my heart had actually set me free. The infidelity in marriage that had humiliated me had ultimately empowered me. The public disgrace that I'd feared had become a platform for inspiring other women facing similar challenges. As I prepared for bed, I thought about the message I'd received that afternoon from a young teacher in Kumasi. Mrs. Mensah, I just left my cheating husband after reading about your story. I have no money and 2 small children, but you've shown me that survival is possible. Thank you for your courage. That message was worth more than all the billions in my bank account. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new adventures. Maybe dinner with Dr. Asante. Definitely more work with the foundation. Always more time with my precious children. But tonight, I was simply grateful. Grateful for the strength to survive betrayal, the wisdom to choose justice over vengeance, and the blessing of a love that had grown stronger through loss. My name is Akosua Mensah, and this is my story. Not of a woman destroyed by her husband's betrayal, but of a woman who discovered her own power when everything she thought she knew about love was stripped away. Sometimes the end of one story is just the beginning of a much better one. And sometimes, being underestimated is the greatest gift your enemies can give you. This has been an incredible journey of betrayal, revenge, and ultimately, redemption. If you loved Akosua's story of triumph over adversity, please hit that like button, subscribe to Stories by Tino for more gripping tales, and share this with someone who needs to hear about the power of resilience. What did you think of Akosua's transformation? What would you have done in her situation? Let me know in the comments below.